Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to an integrated approach. This is Dion Brown, licensed therapist, self care expert, and mental health and wellness speaker. We are grateful to be here on another Sunday for our broadcast, an integrated approach. We're grateful for all of you that are tuning in on Facebook, uh, Instagram, as well as YouTube. For those of you that are tuning in, and we'll say this periodically, those of you that are tuning in on Facebook, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, make statements, etc. We are excited tonight because we're going to be talking about some very important material. We understand that there's a lot occurring in our nation, in the United States, which is causing people to feel a lot of different ways. So tonight, we're going to be discussing political, emotional safety, trauma, and spirituality. And I know some of you may be saying, how in the world can they connect and intersect? But we're going to share that with you all tonight. Again, we're going to be talking about political, emotional safety, trauma, and spirituality. And we are grateful tonight to have with us as a guest uh, Mr. Corey George. We're going to tell you a little bit about him in a second, but he's been with us before, who's going to go with us as we unpack and dissect this material. Now, we know that some of you have tuned in before and you may have seen him on our show before, but for those of you that are new, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, we're just going to share with you a little bit about him. Who is Corey George? Corey George is an award-winning and globally recognized trauma specialist that specializes in the intersectionality of historical, cultural, and intergenerational trauma. He's also an award-winning television host and personality whose work can be seen on season one of A&E's original series Digital Addiction, as well as appearances on OWN's Ayana Fix My Life. Mr. George has served as the creator, executive producer, and host of One on One with Corey George, which aired on DCTV Public Access Network. His steadfast advocacy and purpose-filled work for those who have suffered from various forms of trauma was inspired by his ability to thrive after experiencing childhood sexual abuse, bullying, abandonment, and the sudden and unsuspected loss of his mother at the age of 7. In addition, as a parent to both a trans daughter and a son who is on the autism spectrum, Mr. George is reminded that sound mental and physical health must be a top priority for all, and that the work continues to help others more safely navigate their lives. He's also the recipient of the 2023 Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award for Volunteerism. So, without further ado, we bring on Mr. George. Sir, how are you doing this evening?
Hey everybody, happy to be here. Listen, every time I hear my bio, I was like, who they talking about? Because I'm playing Candy Crush while you're reading. So, I was like, but I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing great, and I'm glad we're doing this subject. I am very, very glad we're doing this subject, or talking about this subject, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's been so much that's been happening, and with the work we do and the clients that we encounter, obviously these things are coming up. Talk about these discussing these are real thoughts and feelings and emotions that people do have. So it's very, very important stuff that's going on that we want to talk about. And just I guess just in general, before we go into anything specific, have you felt any sort of way with yourself, just as a human, as a man, as a black man in America? Have you felt any particular emotions around this time of like political upheaval and all that's happening in our nation?
Absolutely. Even though I'm considered one of the experts in certain spaces of trauma, that doesn't mean I don't feel.
Yeah.
So I have the capacity to recognize it easier and say, wait a minute, let me check myself. Let me see if this is self-induced now, because I'll talk about that later. Um, but yes, I feel it. And as you said, all those labels, those are identities. So for as many identities that we respond to, human, male, black, hetero, not hetero,
Mhm.
Chinese, anything that fits you,
Yep.
every identity has a possibility of being affected by everything that's going on. So you may be affected, and it's interesting because but you could even have an identity that has a privilege while one suffers. So also know that
Like that.
you could be white but still be lower class. So while there's a felt suffering because I'm lower class, there's a difference. There's also a difference because you and I can, well, me and a white person or a white counterpart can go in the same space and be seen differently. So
Yeah.
again, every identity that we aspire to attach to can be affected.
Absolutely. And as we see people are coming on through Facebook, we want to remind everybody you'll have the opportunity to make a comment or question as we go forward. And because you've been on this network before, we understand how engaging the audience can be and how we can really delve into a lot of subjects and topics. So let's jump on in. Let's just jump on in. So this November, it's a huge event, huge event occurring in American politics. Very much so. The implications of this year's election will, I was thinking to say can, but the implication of this year's election will have massive impact on a lot of people. I'm wondering, is it safe for us to say that many people are experiencing, some level of, many people may be experiencing some level of political trauma? And is that even such a thing? Political trauma.
Well, yes, it's a real thing. It's always been a real thing. Where do we think that systemic trauma starts? Where do we think that institutional trauma starts? With politics. So we're just branding something we already know and have lived through as a culture. This is why it's important to us, because this is where the traumatization from different systems start. That's what the hierarchy is. It's at the top, and it's always political. So therefore, how could we not call it that type of trauma if we vote folks in to traumatize us? And I'll get back to it. But
wow,
we sometimes normally vote because sometimes we vote people in that are familiar. We vote in people that we admire, that we have some fandom linked to. That for some of us, we are stone cold fanatics, and some of us have mental health issues that are also related to that fantasizing. So again, yes, it is a real thing, and that's really what, especially as a culture, that's one of the main ways that we have been held down. It's through politics. And now with the introduction of, I know you mentioned it on the questions, but I have to say it now.
Sure.
With the introduction of Project 2025, in my opinion, it feels like it's taken us back to right after, like right at post-slavery.
Yeah,
where there were no civil rights, where there were no laws attached to voting for Black people, where from the things I've seen, it opens the door for discrimination, and you have to prove your case, as opposed to it being a liability for a company to do so.
Yeah, to that point, and just like you said, while we're there, I mean, that's a very real cause of stress and anxiety for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Project 2025. I was graced because one of my clients sent me a digital infogram slide on Instagram that really lays out all of the different areas and the proposals, and there are some really significant concerns there that will affect a lot of different people.
Well, can I share? So one of the passion projects I have is helping to reduce helping to lower the percentage of Black men who are taking their lives.
Absolutely.
And looking at the research, what it suggests is that Black men are feeling this way because they feel hopeless, and also through racism and other things, they don't feel seen. They don't feel seen, and they feel hopeless. So when you have that combination, it does give rise for some people, based on the mental health status prior, of course, that they would consider that they're better off not being here. And as we know, that suicide is not about dying, it's about stopping the pain.
It
It's
is.
about stopping something. So if I don't want to wake up every day knowing I'm a black man and knowing that I feel like I feel my code switching. I feel the violation against myself. I literally feel me violating myself just to stay alive, or just with the idea or the thought of staying alive, with the thought of staying out of jail, with the thought of I hope that cop car behind me that has his lights on or off is not going to put their lights on now. That's what anxiety looks like for certain cultures who have experienced certain things. So, and it's almost like, that phrase when folks say that, but that the dating pool has piss in it.
I've
No,
heard
it
that.
doesn't. But no, because it can't be all of us. So the dating pool has a lot of anxiety-filled people who are still healing, and they don't know what the hell to do. Because when you think you got it, then you got this happening. So you see what I'm saying? Is that we have been primed for suffering, and even though our job as practitioners is to help people have less suffering, but now we know that some people are going to come back because they can't stop suffering.
I was in the gym the other day, and I was reflecting about um, that notion in trauma, and it seems like, to your point, we are kind of primed for trauma and primed to expect things to happen. So much so that it's becoming normalized. We're kind of desensitized now
It's
that anything
yeah,
traumatic, because it's compounded trauma, right? It's compounded effect.
yeah,
And God help many of us. I know you and myself as well. We have our some adverse childhood experiences already that are
yeah,
already there from the beginning, and that's just those things are just society, culture, being a black man in America.
yeah.
Those it just builds.
And it's exhausting because many people don't know that when you're making choices every day, just to just an average, that takes up to a quarter of your energy every day. Like brain work takes up a quarter of the calories you burn physically in your body. So just think when you have extra outliers like anxiety and or depression, where you're overthinking, where the brain is just over processing, especially when you have PTSD, the brain's over processing. Yes, you're exhausted. So not only am I required to show up at the job, but I'm exhausted because my brain is tired, but I'm trying my best. Because I was talking to a friend of mine very recently. I said there's this thing where people are dropping dead on basketball courts who never had a heart issue. There are
Mm,
people dying at a gym, working out for the reasons that we want them to work out, but they died at the gym. They just passed out. One of my friends told me he witnessed that, like maybe last year. So I've deduced, and this is just me, is that not only do we inherit the markers of a higher rate of anxiety and depression, but the chronic stress
yes, sir.
is so repetitive. Some of us are still healing from the pandemic. Some of us are still healing from having COVID or losing folks to COVID. Some folks are still healing from job loss and other losses because of those things. And then now you have a new strain of COVID that's said to be more dangerous.
That's what I've heard.
Now you have the politics, and now you have Trump, and Trump excites the people that find an attachment to him, and unfortunately they outnumber us, so that's why it's scary. It because it does feel like, wow, they outnumber us, there's not much we can do, which is the main reason why galvanizing votes is basically the one thing we do have power to do, while we still do it, while we still can.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of items that have occurred since this political cycle that may have been proven to be emotionally unsafe for people. You know,
Mhm.
perhaps, like I said, perhaps we are all being, I tend to pose it in ways we're all being, traumatized in various ways. I mean, right now, as we speak, right now, there's a tremendous amount of racist, sexist material in the air, in the atmosphere, media, social
Yeah.
media. So that in and of itself is,
Mhm.
traumatizing to people. The details of Project 2025, and as I've said to one of my clients, will greatly impact if that material comes to pass. Will greatly impact a number of minority groups, which I'll get into in a minute.
Mhm.
But we are all being traumatized in ways to the points that I believe our brains are starting to change, so we anticipate it. We
So
expect it.
yeah, that's a hallmark sign of development of PTSD is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is
Mhm.
it is there to keep you safe because you feel unsafe. So you're scanning the room all the time. Everything is, is sensitive. And what that does is to your brain is because your brain never gets used to fear. Your brain gets more fearful. So things that used to not bother you back then, now that it becomes fearful, that's a new thing in the inventory that if the brain detects it, okay, now there's fear, and then now there's a stress response. So even in hypervigilance, there's a stress response for some people, which then causes you to have physical health issues if that stress response is so prolonged over time. So now we are more primed to have health issues now all over again. Just when we thought that we were breaking the ice and kind of getting us to a space where, but the emotional well-being was top priority. Now we got to fight extra hard just to have the well-being.
We do. There's the physical stress. There's physical stress from all that we are dealing with and encountering and feeling, and as well as the psychological stress. So there's the fear, there's the anxiety,
Yeah,
depression, there's the
and
uncertainty.
and also on top of that, if you're not good at knowing how to relieve that stress through self-care through therapy, your body will hold that stress. So now your joints, now your back pain, now you're having chronic pain, now you have a high chance of ulcers and diabetes and heart disease. So now so it's an avalanche. Then as time goes on, it will then further actually decrease our lifespan all over again.
Yep.
So that's why it's very important to understand that the now does affect the then. What we do now does affect then. And here's the thing about that whole thing about the policy that they're talking about. Just because it exists is scary. So so I want folks to know we're scared because it exists. Whether or not they pull it off, we're scared that somebody thought that deep about that. So whether or not we win or not, the fear of that project doesn't go away because we know somebody wrote it. We know at any moment if we lose that house or that White House, that can go back in place. So this fear will not go away just because we vote in someone else.
No,
It's already been established. That's the sad part is you can't unring this bell.
can't.
So that means that no matter how hard I work in life, no matter how many degrees or what my bank account looks like, it still feels like there's still a possibility that I still may not make it home.
That's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
Um, Very real possibility. I was, I'm honing down. I'm honing down my travel because I need to probably until December because I need to what are they saying now? I need to unbig my back. Uh, so I'm really
Well,
really honing in my nutrition and fitness schedule.
well, how
But
about this? My back is big, but I'd rather have a V. Okay. I got wings and I want my wings. So maybe you need the wings. You just need to just make the V. Because I'll make this because you can't make your back small, but you can make that V. So
okay, okay, I'll take that. That's good.
yeah.
That's
So
good. I like that.
big backs are fine as long as they're big, healthy backs. Okay.
That's good. That's
So
that's that's a good one. That's very true.
because
Very true.
mine is a healthy back. It ain't going nowhere because I worked for it. So
Yes, very true. Very true. Recently, and I say that because recently when I was in Panama, which was definitely some good eating, um, I decided to look at the American news, which I usually don't do. Some of the countries that I visit, they may have most of the television channels in their native language, and
okay.
CNN and MSNBC may be in English, but that's just about it. So when I was in Panama, that's when the assassination attempt occurred of Donald Trump when I was in Panama. And I decided to watch that. I decided to tune into that a little bit more, deeply. Obviously there are some people,
Mhm.
I have a few comments. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Yeah, there are some people who are very pro-Trump who were probably pretty traumatized, by such an encounter, and then other people might have felt a certain sort of way. But What do you think might have happened concerning trauma had that attempt been successful?
Yeah, because I've never have I talked about that attempt? No. I never have. And that's one way that you protect yourself is the conversations you're willing to have. Um, I I know we thought about it. I know a lot of us may have thought, oh well, if they killed him, then that would give somebody the reason to to assume the wrong person and then launch whatever type of rebuttal they felt that was necessary. And because we know that Trump has been extreme, his followers, some of them are extreme because they connect to him on varying values. So if you find what he does okay, then that's your value, and then you're dangerous to me.
Yep.
So then you have people who are like him, or people who, and we witness there are people that probably need a psych eval because you're doing way too much,
Oh, for sure.
and you're careless and unattached in reality. So the fear is those people will rise. And those people are part of systems. So these are not just people that, but they live in trailer homes. These are people that own companies, that can own things, that can make things happen. So yes, that is a real fear.
Yeah, it makes sense. Um, yep, absolutely. To your point, I mean, there's a number of things I was thinking about in reference to that. An individual's belief system matters, and I don't mean belief in the sense of like religion or spirituality, but what they believe about something, some sort of values,
Yeah, their value system. Yeah.
some sort of principles, or even their beliefs about a person.
Yeah.
When I was in Panama, I decided to torture myself, and I watched the Republican National Convention, and there were a number of African American men who got up and spoke, and their belief system was that America was not a racist country. So, if that is their, case in point, if that's a person's belief system, then that will affect. In the psychological sciences, we look a lot between a person's belief, their feelings, or their thought process, their feelings, and their behaviors. So if an individual believes and holds on to that really firm, that fixed type of belief that America is not a racist country, then he or she in their emotions will feel a certain way, and then they'll act a certain way in their behavior, which, to your point, produces hazards and dangers, for other people, wondering. We can both attest, we at least think about it when we get pulled over by the police. How's this going to go? What is this person's belief system about me?
Yeah.
What, the black men, them pulling me over. So it's very real stuff. And these.
But can I add something? Because
Sure.
this part brings up something very big because of how I think. I'm thinking, what did you do before you got here? Are you and your wife cool? Like, did you leave the house in a bad mood? What did you encounter? Because some of these reactions are not because they may think it may be a combination of their values plus I've been working for 10 hours. I should have had a break.
Yes, sir.
I am quick on the pistol because guess what? If I'm tired or if I'm in or if my functionality is anyway diminished, that also diminishes the way that I respond. So even on a granular level, think to take that same process to any other person or thing that you encounter that isn't necessarily always about the values they hold that may affect you, or is it that going up against their own daily life? Because some of these people have suffered as well. And so their suffering is on top of their own values. So now it's like a push and pull. And now it's a whole amalgamation of who they probably were not 5 years ago, who they probably were not if it was 8 years ago. But as life has gone on, and if they have not had an effective way to timely deal with these things that they may have been suffering through, we may be experiencing the brunt of all of that lack of processing.
Absolutely. DJ Touch and Go said we must get out there and vote. Absolutely. Very important. And Mr. Seabrook said concerning like people being anxious and fearful and concerned, depressed, it's worse now due to this during a political year. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and And I think that anything that, and especially when it goes against a community or a person that feels like they've been marginalized. So the concept of being marginalized versus it factually being, well, factually happening has nothing to do with how your brain sees it. If your brain feels it based on based on how your brain works, you will feel like a marginalized person. So that comes with its own set of psychological types of you know, outcomes for you, because then that can increase your chances of anxiety and depression.
Yep.
Because if you already feel you marginalized, then there's possibility that it either won't change or it gets worse. If you think that the possibility, see, the brain says, even if there's a possibility, I'm going to act like it's happening and I'm going to have a stress response, even if nothing's happening. That's like a trigger, right?
It
So in
is.
the moment of a trigger, you may, like, I may say a word that may be a trigger, but nothing's actually happening in the moment. But your brain just said, "Oh, something's happening. I am, and my body needs to respond to that."
Constantly on a regular basis, there's a massive amount of negative comments, images, statements being released on media, social media, all over the place. One of the downsides of this social media arena that we're in is, anybody and everybody can post anything, say anything, create a reel, infogram, just put information
Mhm.
out there. And so you actually mentioned one great thing that I did like, already. One way that people can, those of you that are in your listening audience, whether you're on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you can ask a question or make a comment in real time. We'll see it, post it, respond to it. But one great way you can protect yourself, as Mr. George just mentioned, is deciding which conversations concerning politics you want to engage in. That many of you work in government or other corporate environmental settings with other people. Some may look like us, some may not. Some may support one candidate stronger than the other. But you have the right to decide what conversations you will engage in or not, particularly in the workplace, particularly if you're concerned about any fear of retaliation. So that's one important way to go ahead.
Well, yeah. So let me give you a few ways, because you said one way, I said no. I need to give y'all a few.
Yeah.
The first thing is we have to remove the struggle mentality. Like, we have to always push through something. We can say no, we don't need it. We can say no, I don't have to watch it. We can say no. I tell my friends, do not forward me videos of life events that are traumatic. I don't need to see somebody get killed by the police 4 times. So, and that's called a boundary, and I will enforce that. Um, and also ask yourself, what is your why? Why do you have to see it? Didn't you just see this 5 seconds ago? Isn't it galvanizing your brain? Isn't it kind of making you worried and or upset or somewhat sad? Once you start feeling something, stop. So when I see something that kind of burns me a little bit, I close my phone and I find me a little bag of chips and I sit myself on the couch. I surely do. Why? Because I know my capacity. I just hit my capacity. So I respect myself in knowing that I'm not going to be guilty or less guilty of violating my own boundaries. And secondly, how often is enough? If you're watching CNN for 8 hours straight, it's overkill. That's like trying to see what a 2 pound weight gain will look like on you. Like, you'll never see it. Also, what do you think that you'll miss if you reduce your frequency? And also, I do want to respond to Mr. DJ Touch and Go, because I think that we all need to hear this. So your answer about the police, it says, I think it depends on how you respond when the police arrive. If you are combative, it's more likely to go wrong. I'm so glad you said that, and I'm so happy to tell you that you're wrong. I'm so absolutely happy and joyous
Glad you came back to that.
Sunday. I don't know your culture. I can't see your icon, but you are sadly mistaken. We've seen videos, we've seen examples where that doesn't matter with certain cultures. So we need to stop saying these lies towards ourselves and our own, because it makes us feel like, oh, and then also it forces us to have to adjust who we are.
Yeah.
Because again, we don't know because also as first responders, they also don't know what we've gone through. Because if I'm speeding, What if I'm speeding because I'm having a medical crisis or I need to go somewhere because I'm worried about something? What if that's the catalyst for my attitude because I'm worried? But if you are already highly sensitized and you take my anxiety as provocation, sir, no, he's still wrong. Not so. I was happy to answer that question. And then we've seen other cultures also exhibit worse behavior and very blatant behavior, and they still went to jail alive. How many school shooters went to jail alive? And how many white ones were killed? I'll let you do the research.
Yeah, it's a good
You
point.
can walk into a church and try to kill us.
Yeah,
But
right.
I just want to make sure I answer that question and give you guys what you need to know to not have an assumption, but also you do have to mind yourself because yes, I am black, so I do have to mind myself. But this doesn't all go back on us.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And it doesn't. To your point, and it doesn't. It doesn't mean if you do the right things or say the right things that it's still not going to go bad. Because unfortunately, that's happened quite a bit. Quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Right. Gotcha. So it's definitely clear. Again, for those of you who are on Facebook, feel free to ask a question or make a statement or comment. We will see it here. One of the things that I share with my clients a lot, I have a few clients who absorb a lot of media and social media very strongly,
Mhm.
so it can affect them, affect their anxiety levels, their depression, their fear. So I've had to say to a number of people, to the point of which you just mentioned, set limits and boundaries about their intake, how much they take in. Do not have CNN or any other news networks playing all day and night in your house in the background while you're doing paperwork, even while you're sleeping.
Oh yeah.
Subconscious is powerful, so don't have all of that stuff playing day and night.
But we also have to be doing things like even if we're we, just because you're busy doesn't mean it's a good busy. So if you're working alone, if you're going to the gym alone and you open that phone, it's right there. Let's go out and get some social activities going on with other people.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
be involved in other things where your phone is not the thing that has you tied back to your reality. Where is your reality on the outside? Now, see, for the younger folks, we have to understand that their reality is more on the digital side. So that's how I reach my children is I have to kind of get in their world because my kids are 17 and 20 now. But we should try to reintegrate being social again. Being social feels good. Being social allows us to have those connections that do help us thrive. Because because as a as a human race, because we thrive in groups, and that doesn't mean the text group. That means doing something and having those things that you love, and also finding those things you love. And are you doing that enough? Are you doing things that you like that actually takes you away from a little bit? And also ask yourself or figure out why you have to have so much of that information.
Yep.
And is it linked to why you're in service, though? As you said, it's like, is it linked to why you're in service? So if you're watching images of people that other folks or that you think are attractive and you already have a self-esteem issue, why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, I agree fully.
And the question really isn't why, because that could be a more judgmental way of saying it, but it's more of, can we look at that? Can we look at the relationship between what you're feeling and experiencing versus what you're ingesting? Because there could be a tie there.
Agreed. All right. For some reason, my screen looks a little frozen. I don't know if you're able to see clearly on your part.
My lips are moving. I can see me, so I don't know what they see. I
Okay.
don't know what they see.
Yeah, it looks clear on some of the other on some other things for some strange reason. As long as you can hear me, I can hear you. We're fine. But I'm pretty steady. I'm pretty frozen. Maybe it'll come back at a point, but you can still hear me, so that's fine. All right. Um, for many people use media and social media around this election. Um, I have seen that some have criticized some of the media outlets and networks as far as possibly using fear tactics. Now, I think you have a pretty strong background in media, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So you know that when you know that media is media is very powerful in how it shapes us, right? And how it shapes what we do, how we think, how we feel, how we see things. Um, there does seem to be a rise of fear and anxiety around this election about the outcome and what may happen next, and next movements and next steps. Um, from your from your background in media,
Mhm.
how do you see media being used in this election stuff so far, good or bad? How do you
As soon
see
as I read the question, I want to use this example. So when 9/11 happened, I was in DC. I was in Navy Yard area. I was on lunch break. I was walking around and I heard something. Then I heard all these sirens and big things go off, and I'm at the Navy Yard and I'm not getting it. I'm 25, had to be 25, and I'm going back on the base, but I couldn't get back on. So
it?
then I realized what happened, and I went home. Because I was in walking distance. So the next day, I go in the office and there's a break room, and I see most of my coworkers in the break room, and the news is on, and they are repeatedly showing the planes hit the building while they're talking for like minutes and hours. But but they're repeatedly showing you the plane enter the building. Then you're kind of seeing people jumping out.
Wow.
Did we? And I didn't know what I know now. But here's a choice I made, and I'm thankful I did. When I saw it once, I just turned around and went back to my desk. I think I made a young decision based on what I had or experienced in my childhood.
Okay.
That there were certain things I'm just not going to subject myself to because I got a choice now. So that has saved me in, in my adult life. So now, how do we look at it here? I wouldn't call it fear. I would call it a form of sensationalism. It's like when you look at reality TV,
Hmm.
they usually are casting the worst of the worst so they can get the worst results because it gets attention. Trauma is now laughable in some cases because we are showcasing people fighting, and now it's become laughable entertainment. So now with the Trump thing, it's twofold. It could be fear tactics, but is it fear or is he riling up, or not him, but because I don't think Trump is thinking that deep. Let's be clear. I do not think Trump is thinking that deep. I think his camp is thinking very deeply. He has very smart people with him. That how do we excite the people that we know would vote for Trump because of the excitability of the values that have never worked in America.
Okay. Good.
So I don't think that they're trying to scare us. I think they're trying to excite the people that are like dormant and to keep them excited about Trump because Trump does excite those core values that are not favorable. And there are a lot of people, whether they're white, black, or Asian, who have some of those core values, and that's why some of them do vote for Trump. Now, some of it is, and I use this example very well. Well, I think today I said I could be a black person that works for somebody else, and I make decent money, right? I'm probably going to be, um, I'm most likely I'm going to be a Democrat. Now I become a business owner, a small business owner, and now I got the money raking in. But we don't realize that if we're not careful, that actually changes some of our core values. So now when we look at the other party that is about trying to keep the rich rich, we can abandon those other core values and attach to something now because it makes sense to us now.
Correct. And that does happen. That
Yeah, and it
does
happens, and it's
happen.
unfortunate because then you have disconnected from humanity. You
Yep.
have just disconnected from humanity, and now I can't trust you if you're if that's why you changed over. If you're going to be one way, be that way because that's your staunch core belief, but not because now it benefits your bank account
Mm.
to accept a party that will most likely misalign the efforts of your own culture.
I said that to somebody recently. I said people are going to. Yeah, a lot of times, people concerning values. Remember, but that's beliefs, right? Their belief
Yes,
system, what they
beliefs.
believe, and their values, and what people hold as important. So people are going to
Hmm.
vote their values, what they consider as important. And yes, there are some people who their primary concern is their wallet and their
Yeah,
money, and they don't care about anything else. Literally, I've heard some people say things like that. Unfortunately, every racial demographic. So that does happen. Let me know if you see any questions or comments, because I can hear you and you can hear me.
Yeah.
My screen is completely frozen. I don't want to refresh because I don't know what might happen.
Exactly.
So
But,
we'll keep it. But if any
but I want to
comments,
add this really, but I want to add this point because when it's uncovered that your core value has to do with financial,
yeah,
um, when it's more financial, this could also speak to a person or people that have also believed and really probably didn't know that they believe that they are worth something based on their dollar value on their or their output,
that's
not just being human, not just being human,
mhm.
and that you're still here with us on this earth that but that the universe said that you have space on,
Yep.
but because I have more money, I'm more valuable. So I need to keep my value because if I lose my money, I don't feel like anything. So
Yep.
so I want to tell people out there, if you're driven by this thing of you that you have to hustle and you have to chase the bag, I would not be surprised if you change parties. I'm just going to just say it. Because your belief system is I am worth what I can produce. I am worth what I can earn. And that for some of us may be that slippery slope.
Right. Very much so. Very much so. What else is again connected and interrelated and interconnected? What's big every election year, particularly presidential elections, is the notion of spirituality. And so one party, and I saw this when I watched the Republican National Convention in Panama on the 16th floor, and I wanted to jump off of the roof uh, because for a long time they present themselves in a in a what I like to call, when I was in my graduate program, uh, master's program taught us about the how to integrate behavioral sciences with spirituality, but spirituality in more of a general sense. We had to take courses in various core courses in religion and religious thoughts, and learn about world religions and do presentations and hear other people's religious worldview. But spirituality had a lot to do, a little bit more to deal with what gave people a sense of hope or a sense of meaning or purpose. But I say all that to say, um, it's been quite evident that the Republican Party specifically seems to try to distinguish themselves. There we go.
Mhm.
Distinguish themselves as uh, I use these words as from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. They try to distinguish themselves as the God Party, right? So this means that they push the notion that uh, people should, or a certain branch of Christians or Christianity should vote for one person or group based upon these values, and not another person. Um, I made a, I made. Can you still see me, hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. I shifted because I can't wait to answer.
Okay, cool. No, no problem. Something happened with my screen. But I bet. But I made a post about the intersectionality of politics and religions can often prove to be irrational and dysfunctional. Uh, and it turns into a concept of actually, there we go. Turns into a concept of actually making America more Christian in some people's minds versus kind of like a white national ideology. I know I said a lot there.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Well, can I don't know if this bursts anybody's bubble,
go ahead.
but a God party is a fearful party.
I got okay.
A God party is an ego-based party.
I like that.
A
So
God party, any person that believes that you must pick one or the other, that's an ego. That's an ego requirement. Because if I'm comfortable with me, you have your pick of the litter, and it doesn't affect and it doesn't affect my esteem. It doesn't affect my value. It doesn't affect my ability to do what I'm supposed to do. But even when we look at things such as white supremacy, that's a fear tactic.
it is.
It, if you look at the reason why the police was created is because they feared an uprising of newly freed slaves because they knew they deserved it. So I know that we are the ones who are subjugated, but at the same time, they're frightened of our whole ability to possibly subjugate them if we have the same power. So that's why I don't walk around with this thing anymore. And I'm from Louisiana. I had to heal that. I'm from Louisiana. I was racially profiled since age 9 by the police. So if anybody can tell you, trust me, I know what this is.
Yeah.
So we have more power, but because of the psychological type of things that have been done over time, it's still hard for us to unwrite that. We have to do that on the individual level, is that because race is not even a real thing. It's not even a scientific thing. So as long as we keep believing race is a thing, we're going to make it a thing.
For sure.
I live a human life, but I just know that people see me as black. I know folks see me as 5'7". I know they see me as brown skin, bald, and a beard. That's not my problem. That's yours.
Yeah.
I choose to live the life that makes me feel that I'm making the most of it. So I'm going back to that just to answer that first. Yeah. So it that whole God thing, or that, pick me or else you're going, or you're going to hell, or the country is at stake. That's a savior complex, and that's an ego issue.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And if we call that, and if we're able to accept that and just say that on CNN and just say that one phrase, this is all based on ego, and I have no more answer for you. I cannot answer this question any more than what you just asked me. This is all fear tactics based on a race that really has always known that they've been scared. That's why they use that type of control.
Yes, for sure. I 100% agree.
And we give way too much energy. So my answer is always short. It's like, no, it's a fear tactic. It's ego based. Next question. So when you don't give certain things that excitement, they don't feed off the energy, because the only way that they stay galvanized is through fear.
Yes, sir.
So think of Hades, and that's all I got to say. What's the next question?
Sure. Next question is going to go into a more newer direction. So my screen came back a little, but now my picture disappeared for some reason, but it's okay. Right. Everything else is still up and running. You gotta love technology, right?
Right.
But we have a woman candidate now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people are moving and galvanizing. So black woman presented, but there's been a whole lot of racist and sexist statements. Of course, movements to delegitimize her being black, and a whole bunch of other things that are going on. When I first heard the news, I was actually like, whoa. Because my first thought was like, and I still don't know the answer to this, my first thought was, is America ready for a black woman president, and then, or woman president for period, just a woman in general, and then, a black woman president. But what's happening is through media, social media, statements, constantly we're talking about being traumatized. I'm sure it's a lot for black women too, in particular, because there's a bombardment of negative statements now that there's a woman candidate. So now it's like racist climate and sexist climate. So that goes back to the several of the things we mentioned earlier, as far as people protecting themselves, being aware of what conversations they want to engage in socially, as well as how much they take in. But yeah, what are your thoughts now on any of that, now that we have a woman candidate?
I still think it's fear, even because I'm a traumatologist, we focus on fear.
Yeah.
So fear, racism and discrimination can also be a secondary act or a primary response, to being fearful. So if you fear something, your response may dictate that you act a fool, basically. And so when I look at this is because Black women are some of the most powerful, the most nurturing, the most forgiving, the most loving um, folks in this country. In this country, um, she can babysit your children. She has managed your stores. She has managed your Winn Dixie. She has run your company. She has been in the boardroom. She has done all this things. She has been a lawyer. She may have been a doctor and a surgeon. She just ran in the Olympics. But is America ready? That's the reason why you should do it. Because
Okay.
they're not.
Correct.
Because how would you prime America for that? So common sense is yes, they're not ready. They were not ready for Obama, but when we got there, we dealt with it, right? So this whole thing of folks not ready, they're always saying they're not ready for somebody. But as we know in life, the things you're not ready for is probably what you probably need the most
And,
because you're in your comfort zone. You're not ready because America's in a comfort zone.
yeah.
So this is how you turn this on the head. Yeah, you're not ready because you're too comfortable and it won't move.
And I think, look, and I think with what you just said with the fear, I think Mr. Trump had released a recent statement. She had an event, and he had accused her of faking a crowd, right? So
The same thing he did.
yeah, how about that? How about that?
Okay.
So a lot of fear tactics, a lot of deception, a lot of lies. Um, so it's a lot happening. I think in addition, this particular year, obviously, when we talk about people, some people voting and their values based upon their wallet and money issues, which clear is that people are feeling the financial pinch, and I've talked with a lot of people about their financial
Mhm.
stress. So um, the details of, like we said earlier, the details of Project 2025 with the stress, the hardship, the fear, financial uncertainty. Um, I I don't know if you had a chance to see I still have it, the infogram, but from what I read, particularly for Black people, women, the LGBTQIA community, and
Mhm.
immigrants, Project 2025 will be deadly.
Yeah, it is. And any subjugated or marginalized,
Yeah.
well, any community that has felt marginalized or any individual, as I said kind of earlier, this can precipitate anxiety and depression even before it's put in place. Why? Because we know it exists. Like somebody had to, like, what if we never knew that this existed? We would not be feeling as strongly right now. But now that it's here, people, now that you know that it's here, what does that galvanize you to do? So I wrote in my book that fear is a fork in the road. It's either, so fear says, do I stop because I don't know how to proceed, or do I decide which direction fear is going to motivate me? Because fear can be a detractor or the motivator for your next choice. So if you don't want Project 2025 to happen and you fear it, then do something about it. That is the logical, sane thing to say. So when you sit in your hands, so and especially if you're not with Kamala, but you don't like Project 2025. Okay, come on now, people.
I've seen that.
Like that makes no sense to me. And because we're acting in this erratic way, just lets me know from a professional standpoint that there's a lot of us that are responding purely out of emotions, not out of logic, because it doesn't make sense. And some things you can't make like you can't make sense. So I tell people take a beat instead of making these rash choices and these rash decisions. Ask yourself, do I have all the information that I need? Information means facts, not your feelings, because your feelings is always going to be the first thing you feel, unless there's a you know un, unless there's some other underlying issue mentally that's not the case. But on average, you're going to feel something first, then you confirm that or you deny it, with the facts, right? So I think we need to take a beat and say, are we making these decisions based on emotions mostly, or is it the combination of logic and emotion? And then that can be the indicator of how people have been affected by the last several years of different types of trauma. So not only, and so I mentioned other traumas, but we have social justice traumas that keep happening.
Constantly.
So apparently, a lot of us are primed to have emotional based decisions now. That's what trauma looks like. So, and so for folks watching, trauma can look like how it's changed your whole ability to make sound decisions. If you think about your last few decisions, whether it's personal or personal or even work wise, but did they feel like they were like the quick thing to do? And you thought about it maybe the next day or that evening and say, wow, I should have done it differently. If that's happening more than often, that's an indicator that you may need to take a moment and ask yourself, where is my emotional brain leaning? Is it leaning towards the pessimism side? Is it less optimistic and hopeful? Because that will change how you make your choices.
It will. Very much so. Very much so. All right. So time is escaping us, unfortunately, as I predicted it would. But we November, right? Let's look at this. November will be here
Mhm.
very soon. It'll be here quicker than we know, right?
Yes.
Things are moving and they're moving quickly. Um, Obviously, there's a reason for everybody to be, aware and alert, you know, paying attention to what's going on, not overindulging ourselves in media or social media. We've seen there's been an increase in racist, sexist remarks, media, social media. You turn on CNN or any of the other networks any day or night, I'm sure if I turn it on later, this just happened. This just said,
Mhm.
breaking this news, this happened. Um, so we talked about the importance of people being, intentional in taking care of themselves, right?
Mhm.
Their own their own uh, their own self-care through practicing and being intentional about their own political emotional safety. And the reality is, it has to be an individual decision.
Yes.
Each person has to make the decision to be intentional about practicing whichever methods work for them to protect themselves emotionally.
Oh,
Go ahead.
but I like to add also, if you're in families,
Yeah,
make that a thing where you protect your family. If you have kids, um,
for sure.
I know this because of who I am, but I talk to them about I talk to them about their influences. I can see how my kids dress is like. So where did you get that from? And
Hmm.
so what does it feel like for you? Have the conversations about because kids know a lot more than we always give them credit. Because then you know a lot more than your mom thought you did.
Facts.
Uh,
Facts.
yeah, and the same things that are loading in our Instagram and Facebook feed are the same things that are loading on theirs. So ask them how they feel about Trump. But your kid may be holding in fear, whereas it may be showing up in school. So your kid may not be acting out because there's a problem in school, but because there's no outlet. And and I look at emotions when they become excessive that your body needs to get it out because your body can't hold all that. So if it doesn't come out through words and coping, it comes out through behavior. And
Yep.
especially with children who can't make sense of it. Some of them don't know what to say. Some of them won't come to you, parents. And do not put the onus on your children to come to you. You're training them on how to have conversations. So you open that door. So then randomly they will start to come to you. My family is proof of that. So we need to start having conversations with people who are affected. And those are the younger ones too, because they have fears as well. And especially if you're 16 and you can't even vote. So now I depend on mom and daddy to make the right decisions. And hopefully they vote the right way. If not, I'm going to get stuck with something. So now we're talking about folks who are wise on it, but can't even make a decision or have a hand in it.
Facts. Absolutely. And you're right. And I'm glad you brought that in too, because kids of all ages, and I have some kids, meaning under 18, in my
Mhm.
practice, they are perceiving and interpreting these things various ways as well.
And I'll
And
say this. Go
go
ahead, please finish.
no, it's having impact on them. Yeah, that was it.
Well, I'm just saying, one of the so I'm revamping all of my main assessment is 17 pages, and because it takes a holistic view of what's influencing you, and I think we need to add that now into assessments as well.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Good stuff. All right. So we want to say to our listening audience who's on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, if it's well, YouTube and Instagram, if it's still up and working well.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all for tuning in tonight on another episode of An Integrated Approach. We talked about political, emotional safety, trauma, and spirituality. Mr. George,
Mm-hmm.
two requests before we end.
Absolutely.
Number one is any parting words for our listening audience, and then anything you would like to let the listening audience know about you, how to reach you, contact with you, anything you have going on.
Absolutely. First thing I like, the only thing I tell people is to work towards becoming the expert on yourself. That means you become the expert, but you know what your boundaries need to be, you know what your strengths are, and you know what your weaknesses are, and you know what positions not to put yourself in. That's my word to you. Become the expert in yourself. That's your job. Secondly, you can always find me and I am at my website, which is CoreyGeorge.com. I am on Instagram mostly and Twitter. And it's Corey George Cares. And there's no E in Corey, so it's just Corey George Cares. And what's coming up for me? I'm actually out in a couple of weeks, about 3 weeks. I'll be making an announcement about a special podcast series I'm doing. That's going to be launching very soon. So I'm excited about that. And just doing my best, just doing my best to be available and serving the spaces that need me most.
Okay, thank you, thank you. One of our regular attendees, Lamar Graves, said he hated that he missed this. Lamar, you can thank you for tuning in. You can watch on my personal Facebook page, Dion Brown. You can watch, but you can also go to YouTube and see the entire broadcast, the replay. Once we end the streams, you can see the replay on YouTube, DMV Therapist. So you should be fine. Cool. All right, so we want to just thank you all, and you again. We're here every first Sunday at 6 p.m. for an integrated approach. With the holiday schedule, we're going to be on a different Sunday for a few months, but then once we get through Labor Day weekend, we will be back to normal. So, all right, so I want to thank you all, and until next time.